really technically should from a schedule standpoint, and I overwhelm my own system, and then I just figure it out as we go because we're 10xers, isn't that right?
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Welcome to Revolution Network. This is Dr. Jason Dean, and next to me, to my right, left, whatever,
I'm over here
is
somewhere, man.
Jeremy Ryan Slate. So I always tell people that I have a inner group of people who I'm always messaging back and forth each day who are involved in this quote unquote political great awakening, planetary awakening situation, who understand some of the crazy talk that we can do behind the scenes. And Jeremy is one of them because he is a genius. You're kind of a genius in all areas. I mean, when it comes to political, but also when you dropped the bomb on me that you were involved, you were in the theologian world. So I get a lot of
Yeah.
info back from you, like, hey, what does this mean, and what did you learn on this? And then you're just a damn good podcaster, man.
Thanks, man.
You're very welcome. And it's so much fun to talk to another podcaster and make it, it's just so like we can just talk. Your audio is beautiful. I love this.
That's what you had Skyped me just a few minutes before this, and I'm like, hold on, man. I got to get the preamp ready. I got to get everything ready to go, man. We got to sound good tonight.
Absolutely, 100%. And you have been watching all this stuff go down as well. And so Kayleigh McEnany just went out
Mm-hmm.
there. Fox cut her off. I don't know if you know that.
Ooh, I
Fox,
missed this, by the way.
yeah, Fox cut her off, and she did like a 20-minute thing, but Fox definitely cut her off, and she was kind of dropping some bombs, quite honestly. She was basically saying, like, we are going to find out what is going on here. This is not legit. And then she called out Democrats, saying that the only people who do not want proper voting or want, clarity and transparency are the Democrats. Like, she ain't playing around, man. And you, like, what? So in your world, because we're gonna get into some of the people you interview, because you've interviewed David Petraeus before. I mean, like, we're talking legit. Like, you've been doing this for a while. You know how to do it, and you have big names. With that background that you've been through, what is this like watching from your standpoint, also knowing politics the way you do?
His book, follow, which is really, really interesting. And that's one thing I really try to do when I'm looking at any one of these guys, is looking at following the money. Like, I know right now they're saying, hey, a lot of this stuff may be in Clarence Thomas's hands and blah, 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 blah. Well, Clarence Thomas is largely funded by Monsanto because he used to be their main legal guy there a number of years ago before he came out of the Supreme Court. So I think the thing that I'm always watching is who's funding these people and where's their money coming from. So I think politics for any of us would be a lot easier, man, if these guys wore NASCAR jackets, because we kind of know like who they're sponsored by. Right?
I totally love it, and it's so true because, and I was just saying this, if this thing breaks down,
Yeah.
if the system goes down, we're not like, this was infiltrated a long time ago, and
Hmm.
like, this is not the first fraudulent election, or I should even say, even if Biden was to win, we
Hmm.
know there's obviously non-transparency going on, or they wouldn't even be going through this process. But this
Right.
was subverted a long time ago. This is nothing new. It's just now that we're actually seeing it unfold at like, it's so blown out of proportion at this
Yeah.
point that it's completely ridiculous. And at this point, you're going to get a reset of the whole entire voting system. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
No, I would hope so, because like, a lot of accountability is missing on that, right? Like, and I think there's been a lot of things moving around, like, is there a watermark on votes, things like that. Well, I think what we actually need is some accountability on how many people actually voted, who voted, because we're seeing how much of a mess it's like. Like we hear stories about, oh, dead people vote in Chicago, or if you remember the movie Tommy Boy, was it Tommy Boy or Black Sheep? I think it was Black Sheep. It was Black Sheep, actually.
Right.
And his brother's running for office, and they find out that all the dead people voted. So like a lot of this stuff's kind of been, I guess in our lore for a long time that it's been happening. I think this is kind of the first time that we're seeing every single one of those stories we've ever seen about voting all happening at the exact same time. So that's why it's kind of crazy and messy, but it's also depending on who you're watching, because other than yourself and OAN and Newsmax, nobody's really talking about it.
Yeah, talk about an exposure.
Well, and Tucker Carlson.
Talk about the exposure of mainstream media. Like, and we'll get into that in a little bit too, and the fact that everyone is literally going over to Newsmax, OAN, things like that, Blaze TV, but also podcasting, which is why I'm going to talk to you, because you're such a legend in this space. Do me a favor, because I messed up the audio. Can you real quick do the Overton's window analogy again for everybody that they missed?
Yeah. So the Overton window, and it's a concept, I think it came from Edward Bernays, but you'd have to double check me on that. But the Overton window is you show two extremes, and then you pick something in the middle, which is still extreme. So what happens is, whether it's the media or whether it's, whatever powers that be, they're gradually moving you, and you realize, like, how did we get here, right? Because if you look at a lot of conservative, quote unquote conservatives now, they're probably closer to Kennedy Democrats, right? And if you look at a lot of quote unquote liberals now, they're way more extreme. So what's happening is we're gradually moving over time. So the things that we thought we were, we aren't. And that's what the concept of an Overton window is. You show two extremes. So people pick something in the middle, but if you didn't show the extremes, it would be considered extreme, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, you actually, I think honestly about 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, when we were on the phone for one night, and I think you mentioned that to me, and literally it's being shifted without people almost honestly even knowing about it. And then we have obviously these, which makes
I was talking to Dave Rubin from Rubin Report about that, and he was saying this. He was agreeing with me too. It's a concept that's used widely in media, and that's how how the sheep are kind of pushed through the herd. You know what I mean?
Totally. And before I ask you about Ray and a couple others, a quick question for you when it comes to media is, what do you see occurring over the next year in media when the fact that you have Fox News, which used to be, I mean, Fox always said, we're fair and balanced. They were never fair and balanced. They were always more conservative. It was never stopped. But they're also part of the MSM because pharmaceutical sales, et cetera. They're being propped up as well. But then you have CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, which is part of the mainstream media. Now you see the Glenn Becks of the world jumping over, creating their own network. You see Bannon now creating the war room on, I think, America's Voice or something like that. Do you see a transition of these big character or dynamic names, even like the Tuckers of the world, the Laura Ingrams of the world? Do you see them shifting into the podcast of their own network? I know Megyn Kelly did it. How do you see that?
Megyn Kelly's done it quite well. Sorry, I cut you off there. I was going to say we actually both said at the same time that Megyn Kelly's been doing it well. But finish your question. I'm sorry.
No, totally, and that was my kind of jumping off point. Is Megyn Kelly totally did it, but how do you see this playing out with some of these big names as we go forward with the next year? Do you think they literally jump ship? I mean, because they're making millions of dollars through the machine right now.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing that I've heard in the background. Whether it's after this election or whether it's after a future one, Trump's looking at starting his own media network where he would have Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and a lot of these guys of it. Because I think the problem we're seeing right now in media, and this is why podcasting like, Joe Rogan and these other medias are doing so well, and yourself, is we're not backed by special interests, right? We're not backed by, well, the pharmaceutical company says you can't sell that because you're actually going to be hurting their quarterly sales. So like a lot of that is driving where our news goes. And I think that's the real problem. So I think we're starting to see a lot of these guys realize, like Glenn Beck's done a great job. So I think we're seeing a lot of these guys realize they can tell real news like yourself because we're not backed by special interests. And I think that's what's really interesting. There's a podcast I've listened to for 11 years ago now. I think I've mentioned it to you before. It's called the No Agenda Show.
Yep.
And one of the hosts is Adam Curry. He used to be an MTV VJ back in the 80s. And they do what's called news deconstruction. They take a look at the news and try and figure out what's happening. They run their model where actually listeners donate to the show, and they read the donations for about a half an hour during the show. So that's a really cool model because you're making money, and they do quite well, but you're being paid by the people listening to you. It's the same thing with a subscription model like the Blaze. I think that is the only way we have real news, and I think that's the direction it's going, is where the news and the media is supported by the people that are actually listening to the media, because now they have to give you the truth or you're going to vote with your dollar and stop paying for it.
It's so funny because I obviously I'm in practice all day long, and so I talk to actual people, and I don't dive into necessarily the politics with them unless they ask me questions. And they're like, "Well, have you watched this news channel? Have you watched?" I go, "I don't watch any mainstream media." And they're like, "Well, how do you know about all this stuff then? And how do you know all this stuff that I don't know?" And I'm like, you think you need to be on the mainstream? Like, there's this thing called Facebook, Twitter. Now there's Parler. There's all these different, like, do you really think that, and I'm not trying to knock anyone's intelligence level down, but do you really think the people out there who are really in the know are watching these networks, or are they getting it from somewhere else, like the Rubin Report and all those other, and people don't even know that there's the alternative still.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think too, like people like yourself and like myself, we're driven also by curiosity as well. So we're what I like to call rabid readers, meaning we read a lot aggressively, and I think we seek out our own information, right? And we look at something and we're like, that makes sense to me, that doesn't make sense to me. The general population doesn't do that. You know what I mean? And I think that we're actually moving a little bit more towards people looking at things and saying, oh, that doesn't make sense. So I think in a lot of ways we're winning against, how the media has been going. And I think it's going to be forced to change.
I would completely agree. So diving into, I'd like to get your opinion on a couple things now before I let them know the amazing people you've interviewed, because I want them to go see it, because it's not just, oh, I know that you've actually talked to people at the highest levels of certain areas. But now, was it Esper is gone today? And
Esper got fired. I love that, by the way, he had his resignation letter ready, so Trump fired him before he could resign. It's like, yeah, fired.
Welcome to business and not government, where if you do not perform, you get tossed out before you can even think about
it. In what world would Chuck Schumer still have a job, man?
Dude, welcome to politics. None of these people would have jobs if they were in the private sector or anywhere remotely close to the private sector. Now, the Esper's gone. Now we have Ray, and what the hell is her name?
Gina Haspel.
Yeah. So what do you see happening with those folks?
I think both of them are going to be gone very soon. I know you and I read a lot of the same sources, but I think they're going to be gone quite soon. And I'd like to see how Richard Grenell plays a part in that, because I've really gotten a lot of respect for him, and I tend to get a lot of information following what Richard Grenell is doing. I think he could be a replacement for one of those. I've also I was listening to an interview last night where I've heard Sidney Powell's name thrown around for possible FBI director, and she said she would be, quote unquote, an equal opportunity offender, which I really love.
Yeah, she didn't deny it when asked.
Yeah, hit both sides hard. So in my opinion, if we put in Sidney Powell at FBI and we put in Richard Grenell at CIA, I feel like we could fix a lot of things. I also feel like, I don't have my finger on the pulse for national security, but I do feel like we classify way too much. And when you classify things, it hides people from knowing what's actually happening in your country.
That's 100% accurate. It's actually, I read a tweet before I came on that there was somebody, some Rhodes individual, who was saying that they are getting the transition started immediately with Biden, and Biden is in discussions with foreign leaders about his plans and policies. And a couple white and blue check marks on Twitter said, Logan Act, you're not allowed to talk to anybody before you get in there.
No, not at all. Especially when you haven't been read in. And he's looking at the GSA, and I don't know if you saw this, by the way. They created the Office of the President-elect, which actually isn't a thing. But he's like, the Office of he's got letterhead and everything. I didn't know it was even a thing. But at the same time, like, nothing's been verified yet, right? Like the media doesn't elect a president. It's not until each one of these states have their Secretary of State say, yes, this is correct. You won our state. So, Al Gore had to wait 36 days, man. We can wait a few more days to know the right thing here.
100%. Now, what is your podcast name, sir? Because I'm
Yeah.
going to take them into some amazing guests that you've had on.
Yeah. It's called Create Your Own Life. I interview people that are world-class performers and do things at the highest level.
So, which is awesome. And he's been doing this for, like, we're talking legend here, folks, in the podcast.
My 5-year anniversary is in a week and a half.
Congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So take me through some of the top people that you've spoken to. And where I'm going with this, folks, is I said a long time ago that in order to create our America back where it's supposed to be, it is folks like yourself who are watching this right now who need to go out and create, whether that's something in business you do, or that's like that, whether it's a physical thing, or you buy a $20 microphone and you have your laptop. You don't need all the equipment that we have. You can literally buy a $20 microphone, have the software that's already in your computer, and you can literally get your voice out there to change the world. But you've been doing this for 5 years. Who are some of the biggest names that you've talked to and actually gotten time with?
So I'm a huge racing fan. So I've had 3-time Indy 500 champion 𝗬𝗓𝗄𝗃𝗍𝗃, which is pretty incredible. I've had Danica Patrick on the show, Grant Cardone, who I know I see you wearing his shirt right now. I'm a huge fan of Grant. I've had Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report on. I've had former CIA Director General David Petraeus on the show. I actually have a 3-star general coming on next week, who's got a lot of insider information too that I'm be stoked to be chatting with as well. So I talk with a lot of people that are doing things in a big way, and have also they've gotten through a lot of stuff, man, and they've figured out how to do it. Like I don't talk to people that were born into money or something like that. I talk to people that have worked their butt off to get where they are.
That makes sense. And now I'm going to ask you a question because I want to know how you got started, because I have a lot of people that say to me, well, you get to interview all these big people like the Ted Nugents of the world who Jeremy actually hooked me up with, actually, and Shemaine.
Ted's a wild man. I feel like I survived that interview. He's incredible.
He is incredible. But it's funny because people say, well, you have all these big names and I can't just get these big names. And I will tell you personally, you can tell your story on this, but I did not start with big names. And I will tell you, do you know how I got big names? I worked over a period of time to do it. And then honestly, I just emailed them after having logged many hours of doing this. I reached out to them and I said, hey, I've been doing this for a while. I'd love to have you come on. And they actually did. And that's honestly how I get who I get now. I mean, what was your story with that?
Yeah, I love that, by the way, that once you really have a platform established, you can reach out to people that you really admire and you can bring them on it. I know we've both chatted with Dr. Tenpenny, which is cool. And also John Perkins from the Confessions of Economic Hitman. So I feel like it's really cool when you can bring people like that on board. For me, dude, my original podcast was called Rock Your Life. It was absolutely horrible. It was me talking this is back in the day when I had an iBook G4, not even a MacBook yet. So it was me talking to the computer mic, and I was a life coach, which I'm the furthest thing from because I totally lack empathy. So I totally lack empathy. My opinion of things is, why can't you do it? Get over it. Do it. So I was not the best life coach ever. So that went on for about a month and a half and I quit. And then in 2015, I started Create Your Own Life by making a list of the 100 people I most admired, reaching out to them and just kind of going for it. And I found that I had a really high success rate. One of the first people I reached out to was Seth Godin. And he said, hey, when you get to 400, let me know. And he was my 400th episode. But you got to shoot big from the beginning, man, and kind of work it. But I literally was nobody. I had no social media following. I had 4 failed businesses before that. So I was working at somebody's a friend's web design firm to try and pay the bills. So you know what I mean? I was nobody. So if I can do it, anybody can do it, man. But it's about the willingness, the grit, and the ability to push through that, and just kind of shoot from the hip and go for it. And as you kind of grow, you keep following up with those people.
And the beauty part is you can literally go on YouTube at this point and go how to podcast, and they will literally show you how to buy a microphone on Amazon, plug it into your laptop, and generate at least something that sounds decent and get it out there. And for $50 a month, you can have your podcast out to the world globally. The people you've interviewed, I know you interviewed Dr. Tenpenny. You were super excited about that one because obviously
I think you hooked me up with that one, didn't you?
I think so. You like Nugent was between us, and then you said like you
Yeah.
got to interview Perkins. You got, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Perkins, and then I'm like, here's Tenpenny, take Tenpenny.
That was pretty incredible because I do, I do have a daughter that isn't vaccinated, and I'm very passionate about that subject. And I know we've campaigned for that here in Jersey, which we're rapidly losing our rights. But it is what it is. But continue.
No, to it when all the people you've interviewed, how many people you can name some that
Yeah.
you went into it because I've learned something about this is I don't really do this for the time on air. I mean, I know that the
Yeah.
admiration comes, and so do you, and it's nice. I'm not gonna lie, but I do it to educate. But I want to tell you, every single freaking podcast I do, even if it's a person who's been on before, I do more learning sitting here and getting
Hmm.
nuggets of information, education from them than honestly probably a lot of people on this. And so I
Yeah.
kind of, selfishly do this because I'm going, oh, I can go learn something from so and so today. I'm gonna find at least one thing that I can learn that's new. Like I just had Jerry Wayne on, and like, dude, he just hooked me up with like two or three YouTube channels that I didn't know about regarding like future and technology that I'm totally into, but I didn't know was there. And I'm like, oh, this is like, it's almost a selfish thing of I get to gain knowledge and education by
Yeah.
just putting a little bit of work in. Who did you gain from? I know you gained from a lot, but like, give me some of
Yeah.
the people you really were impacted by.
Well, I'll say first of all, like I'm a failed teacher, and what I was really good at was being a student. My master's is in ancient history. I took 12 years of Latin. I was a failed teacher, and it's when I got back to being a student again, which is what you and I do by being interviewers. Like that was a really big deal, and that's where I succeeded. Like for me, Grant Cardone was a really big deal for me. I had been told no for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years by his team, and actually ran into him on the street in New York City. And he's like, oh, nice to meet you. I have a podcast. Cool. I'd like to do that. What, you would? And I learned so much from his story because you see what he's doing now. The guy's, I don't know if he's past a billion yet, but he's pretty close.
$1.8 billion.
He's he's at 1.8 now. Okay. So, he's come from the point of, he was in rehab. He was struggling. He had all this stuff going. He had people tell him he couldn't do anything. He hated sales. And he committed to that thing. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned, man, is people that are willing to commit to working through adversity. There's so much growth there. There's a huge amount of growth there. Like when I interviewed former Chicago Bear Desmond Clark, he played 14 years with the Bears. He grew up, I believe, in Florida, actually. I don't remember exactly, maybe the Jacksonville area, but he grew up in a bad area with a dad that was on crack. And, they told him, you're never going to play football in college. So he goes to college and plays at Wake Forest and starts and becomes an All-American and, has all this incredible stuff happen. They say, you'll never be drafted in the NFL. He's drafted in the 6th round, plays 14 years, goes to the Super Bowl, has all this incredible stuff happen to him. So I think that, really, to me, it's people that I can learn from that adversity and what they do with it is really, really, really incredible because like we have some things happen in our lives and we're like, we get so upset about it. But you see some of these people and what they've been through and you're like, how could you be upset about your life when somebody has lived through that and they come out the other side and they're still a great person?
That makes a ton of sense. How was Ruben? Ruben's interesting to me because
He was one of the nicest humans I've ever spoken with.
really,
Yes,
just like
super,
totally
super
chill
cool
and
guy.
happy and
Super cool guy, but like he gets going when he gets into the left. He gets a little aggressive when he gets into the liberal left. But he was a super cool guy. I learned actually a surprising amount about him from his personal story. Like most people don't realize, Dave Rubin was a comedian,
I didn't know
and
that.
he when things weren't going well. He goes, I thought I was going to get mercury poisoning at one point in my life, and so did my mom, because I lived off of canned tuna fish, and that's how I was surviving. And what I would do is I would go out in the street and hand out, like the playbills to get people to come to my show that night. And he goes, I remember the city was empty. Hurricane Katrina had just passed, and the city was like in destruction. And the news story was random guy Dave is out there in the street trying to get people to go to a show tonight because he knew that was when he was going to break through. So to me, like somebody that like would go to that level and eat that much tuna fish to be willing to like make it, dude. Like you can make it there because if you can do that in New York City, you can do it anywhere.
That's interesting. Obviously, amazing story, but it's also interesting because anybody who has made it, whatever business it is, or education, or anything else, there is so much determination, hard work, and it's so funny because this is a weird example, but like Parlor, for example, like Parlor is like skyrocketing and blowing up in the last like what week? I mean, it's been a month or so, but like the last week
Yeah.
it went crazy. And I hear so many people like, but I don't know how to use it. It doesn't make sense. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, guess what? I don't know how to use it either. How am I learning it? I went to YouTube a little bit and then I just started playing with the app. Like it's
Yeah.
everything, whether it's podcast, webcast, whether it's business, whether it's anything. Like you've heard from people, like they just dove in and they just started.
I learned from doing, man. That's how I've always learned. Like I think too many times people want everything to be perfect before they'll figure it out. And it's like it's like I love talking to my dad about technology because he freaks out and doesn't know how to use it. I'll be like, I have no idea how to use it either. I'll be like, oh, we'll do this, do that, do this. Oh, look, it's fixed. Look, it works now. And I think that's what the really important thing is you have to have a willingness to confront anything and kind of just go for it. And when you have that, you're going to fail sometimes, but you're going to succeed more than you're going to fail because you're going to find your way through it. And I think that's what's really, really incredible is that willingness to confront anything.
Dude, that's freaking awesome. So do me a favor. This is what I want to talk
Yeah.
about. I have been yelling at my Patriots out there who are on right now and saying, do me a favor. You have to follow your dream. You have to create something. You
Yeah.
have to you have to create on the purpose, etc. Now I'm going to show your book because you just came out with a book and we've been talking about this
We're
a
in
while.
pre-launch now, so the book will be out next year, but we're in pre-launch right now.
And I said, you need to get your hands on this because Jeremy knows what he's doing. I'm going to bring this up and tell us a little bit, give us a sneak peek at what might be in it.
So as I said, I've interviewed almost 800 incredible people. Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. I had one of the guys that actually wrote the song Hotel California on from the Eagles. So I've had incredible people on the show, and I've found that more often than not they have 6 things in common, and they may come from very different areas of life, but they always do the same things. So in this book, I talk about the principles that they applied to become extraordinary individuals. Like one of them being, we talked about adversity. Adversity is huge, man. Like people that are extraordinary, they look at adversity and they say, like the average human body temperature is 98 degrees. I can go to 120 and keep turning up the heat. You know what I mean? They've looked at things that were difficult are now easy for them because they approach them that way. Another thing is they don't let other people define their dreams. I find often in this society, we look at what the media says our dreams are. We look at what the entertainment network says our dreams are, and we try to define ourselves by those. People that are extraordinary, they decide what their dreams are, and they don't invalidate the dreams of others. They say, hey, that's a great dream. It's not mine though. And they go for their dream. Another really incredible thing is they realize that your passion may not be something that makes you money out of the gate. So you can't expect to be passionate. You find something you're good at and continue to work at it until you bring it to where you can become passionate about it and make incredible amounts of impact from that. So like that's a lot of what we talk about in here. And it's sprinkled with a lot of these incredible stories of the people I've spoken to. So you can really get tangible evidence of how this works and how these 6 principles can really change your life.
Now, I have a question for you because I know how your world works, and I know that you get to hang out with your wife and your daughter on a daily basis, and people are like, what does he do for a living? This is what he does for a living, folks. Like, he gets to literally interview and talk with some of the coolest people on the planet on a daily basis, and that's his living. That's what he gets to do, and he gets to hang out near his parents and make sure they're cool. What is that life like for you to be able to not and nothing wrong with somebody, if somebody likes their 9-to-5 job, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it like to live abundantly in this space? Maybe 5 years you didn't know you could.
Well, so for me, it started with the podcast, and then it became for us running a PR agency where we get people on podcasts, in which I'm business partners with my wife. We have a team of 14 now, which is pretty awesome. So we've grown a lot this year, especially COVID got nothing on us. We've had a really, really great year. So it's really awesome for me. My personal purpose is to uplift people that have really big purposes and really big impacts, because the more people like that I help, the more my impact grows. So that's why I'm trying to help you with as much information as I can, Jason, because I know you'll figure out what to do with it. And that's why a lot of our clients are really big impact people, because we want to help them. So for me, one of the big things is I get to travel a lot with my family for speaking. I spoke in Kyiv, Ukraine last year, and we're hey, let's figure out how to visit 4 more cities. So we went to Budapest and Bratislava and a lot of things like that. So I get to do a lot of speaking, which is awesome. I get to impact a lot of lives. And the thing that really impacted me, honestly, are the success stories. Like, I had somebody that growing up was like a huge opinion leader for me because he was a year older than me, and I always thought he had it all together. And then I didn't realize, like, he had some adversity in his life. You know, has some issues with his family, and he ended up getting a divorce and had to figure things out. And he says, "Hey man, your podcast got me through." I'm like, "What? I didn't even know you
Wow.
listened to my podcast." So like, it's things like that that you know the impact you're making every single day, and you're living in your purpose, which is just really incredible. But here's the thing: you got to work to get there. You're not going to know your purpose out of the gate.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point. So I'm actually I look at the comment, and somebody put up a comment about, and I want to create on this a little bit. Let's take an
Yeah, man.
example, and and Jeremy's gonna help me with this. And I did not tell him I was gonna do this. This is off the fly, but I think it's a good idea. Somebody wrote a comment. Their husband just quit their job, and they're
Mhm.
throwing all of their energy, and I'm assuming money, into like a towing company. And she
Okay.
says, really scary, but so positive. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, yes, sure, welcome to entrepreneurship. It's scary as hell. You dive in and you work and you build on it. But now I'm looking at the world of YouTube, podcasting, etc. And someone might say, well, it's towing company. Like that doesn't. But I look at it and go, okay, how can I turn that into an information center to push out to somebody else? Like what do you think about that? Like what do you think about taking something that doesn't make any sense at all in the forefront and then turning that into education or monetizing it or creativeness?
Well, now you're talking Grant Cardone's language, man. It's information assisted sales. Like, you got to be out there creating content, educating people about your market, right? Like, you know, businesses may not know why they need to partner with a tow truck company. Businesses may not know like some of the insurance things that exist for them if they work with a tow truck company. So like, you need to become the education center of that, whether it's having a podcast or whether it's having a blog or whether it's having a YouTube channel. But if you create that, you're actually helping your customer get closer to a buying decision. Or here's the more beautiful part: having that listener or that reader tell someone else about you, which then leads them to a buying decision. So you need to become somebody that starts controlling the information and controlling the narrative, because you can get your customer closer to you than you ever thought.
That it's actually fascinating because that makes 100% sense, and it's actually exciting because you're like, oh my god, like, I didn't even think of that market. And then I just talked to Jerry a little bit ago, and I talked about no matter what, we are heading into a brand new economy in 2021 and beyond, whether it's crypto and other stuff or AI and robotics, etc. Like it's coming. There's no way around that. But
Hmm.
with that, we are changing fully and literally like I get in my truck to drive to work and I don't listen to the radio. Like some people are like, oh, I need to listen to the radio to relax. Like my day is filled with podcasts, with
Yeah.
YouTube, with tons of stuff. And it feels like there's so many people out there, even if you have a hobby, like you literally just turning into an information product is the way to create this new world. I mean, you've done it with the branding aspect of you because you guys,
Yeah.
you're obviously doing podcasts basically every single week, but you're also
Hmm.
helping people find their own market in podcasting, correct?
Yeah, we help people get on other podcasts as guests to really get their message out there. And I think that's what's really, really, really important. Like, it's once again another Grant Cardone thing, but like, the only reason that, you know, you don't survive is because you don't sell enough, right? So everything you do needs to be telling people about you. And that's why this information age we're in, man, it's really, really cool for any business, because if you just out promote, you're gonna win. You know what I mean? If you out promote, you're gonna win. And if you like, to that person with the tow truck company, I can guarantee you that your competitors in that market won't promote like you can. And that's what you really, really, really have to think about. High quantities get out there and get seen. And it's the same thing with, you know, what we help people do with getting on podcasts. You got to get out there and get seen, man.
And it's because you basically, no matter what you do at this point, whether you sell a widget or you sell a service, like you have to become a media company at this point.
Yes, 100%.
That's
100%, because people are looking to you for education about what you do. That's why, like, the only reason anybody ever works with VaynerMedia is because they see Gary Vaynerchuk all over the place. Now, I'm not really a huge fan because he's kind of an acquired taste, but like, you know, the only reason people know about Gary is because they see him all over the place. And I think that's what you have to be doing with your brand. You have to be everywhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people are like, brand, what does that mean? A brand is like what you are. Who, I mean, it's, I don't want to say it's who you are, but like you can make it who you are. There is ways of doing that, but it's there. If you have an idea and somebody has a problem, you create a solution for that problem, and that's what people actually pay for. I mean, it's no different than diving back into politics, like Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, whatever the hell it's called, CBS, ABC, they used to create a solution for someone's problem. People wanted to know what was going on in the world. And then guess what? They became part of the problem. And now Newsmax, OAN, and Blaze TV and others are becoming a solution, and people are walking away from the old solution.
I saw a screenshot yesterday. Fox News lost 1 million followers on Facebook yesterday in 24 hours.
That's crisis mode, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I'd say that's a little scary, man. And like, it's funny because Bret Baier now can't tweet anything out without getting hammered by like literally everybody out there.
Dude, they are literally, it's almost like they become such a part of the problem instead of the solution that they're driving everyone to the new solution, which is the alternative media. I mean, like, dude, I can see you exploding. Like, you need to become the next media channel, brother.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, man, because we just can't trust our media anymore because of who they're like Saturday night, Judge Jeanine Pirro had a whole episode ready to go on voter fraud, and boom, they canceled their episode because they were too scared of what it was going to do with their sponsors. And when you have people that are the content creators or the people giving you your information, and they answer to somebody that is not the listener, it's a real problem, man. It really is, because that's what's going to happen. Things get squashed. And when you are your own media company and you are supplying people what they need, you become more trusted, and you can also educate your public, man.
That makes 100% sense. So I have a hypothetical for you that you can help all of the noble
Sure.
patriots with, and that is your whole world is, command your brand, create your life. If someone wants to go out tomorrow, and whether they want to do a podcast or they just want to start a YouTube channel, or they just want to like take their hobby that they're really good at and turn it into monetization, what are some of the things that you would do, whether it was through a technological standpoint or just a mind standpoint, physical standpoint, whatever it is? What would you do or tell them to focus on, or how to carry that out?
I'd say get really clear on the idea first, because there's too many people out there trying to create the exact same thing, and because of that, you're not memorable. So I would say get clear on the idea first and who that idea is for, and then I would worry about creating it. And you would want to find out, like, who are their opinion leaders? Who are those people that you want to look at you? Who do they follow? Like, I'll give you an example in the financial space, right? You have people that really like what's the heck's his name? The gold guy, Peter.
Peter Schiff.
Peter Schiff. You have people that really like Peter Schiff. The other side, you have people that really like Susie Orman. They do not agree with each other at all. So if you're going within that, like, who does your public look at as an opinion leader? And that's going to give you a much, much better idea of who they're going to be. Because I find people don't get that granular. And when you do, you're going to have a better way to differentiate from the people in your space. So that would be the thing I would tell everybody, is first figure out who you're going to help and how you're going to help them, and then figure out who their opinion leaders are, then create the content for them. Don't just jump in and create content.
Yeah, it's true. It's I actually did that once. I tried to create a bunch of content without a clear purpose, and I lasted for about a month, and then the energy ran out, and then over a period of time I redeveloped the purpose. And once you did that, like, it actually became easier. Like, it was so simple at that point. And now it's like, you're like, how do you do, I'm sure you get the same question, is like, how do you do so many interviews and work so much? I'm like, it's not that hard, actually. It's pretty easy, because the purpose is so on that it becomes simple.
Yeah. When you build systems around it as well, like, you know what I mean? Like, every interview I do goes through a certain editing process with my editing team. Every interview I do, there's things uniquely I want to ask that person, but there's also some standard questions I'm going to ask as well. So like, when you build systems too, it's a lot easier to approach things like that.
100%. So do me a favor. People want to know where you are. So how do they find? Let's do the book first, because
sure,
I want to make sure. And yes, folks, some people are like, why is he on so early? Is he really live? Yes, I am actually really live right now.
I'm live, man. I'm live, baby. I'm right here.
We are live. This is my Monday. My Monday's turned into this, where I do this stuff all day, off and on, and people aren't used to it because I'm usually at 9:30 at night. But where can they find? I'm going to bring the book up, but I want people to tell them where they can find the book.
Yeah, so the book is called Extraordinary or Extraordinary, and it's the 6 principles that I've learned from incredible people that I've interviewed to really help you become extraordinary yourself. And if you want to grab that, we are in pre-launch right now. So we have pre-order copies of the book. We have pre-order audio copies of the book. We also have some cool offers as well. Like if you want to learn how to interview celebrities on your podcast, we have that. Or if you want to appear on other podcasts as a guest, we have a cool package around that to help you build your celebrity. That's over at JeremyRyanSlate.com/extraordinary. That's JeremyRyanSlate.com/extraordinary. I use my middle name because my parents named me after a cowboy actor.
Ooh, that's an interesting little. I did not know this detail about you.
The only other time I ever heard Jeremy Ryan Slate is when my mom was mad at me, and I knew I was in a ton of trouble.
That's yeah. I get the middle name when I'm in trouble, but you got that. That's tremendous. I love the little factoids I get from you off and on all the time. Like, I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Now, if you have somebody who, and by the way, folks, let me re-show this for you, because see, in the entrepreneur world, we're willing to spend stupid amounts of money sometimes on things that we think are going to get us to the next idea. Like, it could be $1,000, it could be $5,000, it could be 10, it could be any amount of money, and we're like, wait a second, what could I potentially, how many people could I impact, and what could I make off of that deal? Now, this book is, even if you do the low one right here, which is $25 for a book and an ebook included. I'm going to tell you right now, when you read this book, and yes, this is self-promotion for Jeremy. I am promoting Jeremy Ryan Slate right now because I know how good he is. A $25 book and ebook. I'm telling you, you're going to get no less than $1 million idea that you need to dive in on. I mean, it's true. That's I just bought a $150 book the other day, and people are like, "What?" But I'm like, "What's in it will also help me help every single patient from the moment I start reading on." Like, that's a lifetime book, which is going to help a ton of people. So $150 is like nothing, because I know the return on investment, both in energy, life, helping people, as well as money, is there. So like that's a huge one. Now, for anybody out there who might be a podcast listener or a podcast creator, because we have some doctors out there and people in different worlds, tell us about Command Your Brand, which I'm going to bring up here. What is this? Is your branding company?
Yeah, so so for people that have podcasts or that do want to get some of that space, we do have some offers around the book around that too, which are awesome as well. So if they want to support that, great. But at Command Your Brand, we help people to get on top-rated podcasts as guests. We figure out exactly who your public is. We train you how to communicate the right way, get you booked on shows, and we also teach you how to use that content, because how you're using content is almost more vital than even getting it. So we go teach around that, a lot of that as well.
And I want to make it known that this is not just Jeremy who's like, well, we've done a few. Like, look, Inc., Forbes, EO Fire, which is one of the top podcasts in the globe, BuzzFeed, Neil Patel, AWeber Influence. These are no jokes. We're talking massive, top of the scale companies that his work has been broadcast on, shown on, people he's talked to. I mean, dude, you interviewed David Petraeus. I mean, and I'm not saying we love or hate any particular people out there, but like the names that you have spoken to are of such high caliber, it's unbelievable.
Well, I appreciate that, man. My goal is just to learn from the best and, learn from a lot of what they're doing. Some of them have done some good things, some of them have done some bad things, but for me, it's more about learning the lessons of how they've competed at the highest levels.
And then you also, it's interesting, didn't you also interview Danica Patrick, the first not technically the first, but really the first successful NASCAR driver in the world?
Yes. The first NASCAR driver was actually Shauna Robinson, but Danica Patrick she was one of the ones that actually got to, I guess, some of the bigger sponsorship deals, because GoDaddy worked with her for years and years and years. She was the first one to ever win a race I think it was still called the Busch Series at that point in time. They just changed the name of it, which is like the second tier level of NASCAR, but also drive in top level NASCAR as well.
Freaking awesome, dude. Like, I'm going to keep saying this. Jeremy is one of my favorite people and podcasters out there, because he just he goes out and you'll see him where you are on social media, Facebook, Twitter.
So yeah, I'm on Facebook, I'm Twitter, I'm at Jeremy Ryan Slate on all platforms, just to make it easier for people to find me.
So what happens is, I'm going to be honest with you. What happens is when I get my little Facebook or Twitter timeline pop up and I see Jeremy's name there, and I see he's interviewing somebody like massive, I immediately go and I'm like, dude, that is a great interview. Have fun. And he like texts me back of like little details on the inside, like this person's cool, this person's all right, like all this different stuff. And then every once in a while, I'm like, oh damn, how do I get a hold of that person? That's a great guest.
Yeah. Yeah, I usually give you the because what'll happen, and I'll kind of leave them off of this interview. But like what I'll do is after I stop recording, if it's somebody really big, I try and get some inside information with them, and I actually share that with Jason after the interview.
What's the so before we finish, like what is the craziest thing you've heard? I mean, you don't have to go into like specific details if it's personal for anybody, but like what is the craziest stuff that like one crazy thing you've heard from somebody you just did not expect? Curveball question. Everyone gets softballs except for you.
Somebody that I'm gonna leave the name out of this, but somebody that it really shocked me how much they didn't like General Flynn, who I have a ton of respect for. So that was kind of the most shocking thing I ever heard, and actually texted you right away. So that was pretty shocking, and some of the things that were said in that conversation were quite shocking as well.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Everyone has their agenda, no matter which side they're coming from. It's pretty fantastic. But dude, go get his book, guys. He is phenomenal. He is a good friend, and I don't bring him on because he's a good friend. The work he does on a daily basis and a weekly basis is pretty extraordinary, and getting it out there to people, like, this is one of those guys who is literally changing the world from a capitalistic, free market American standpoint. He is a true patriot. Jeremy, I appreciate you, brother.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me today. And I just appreciate some time with your audience today, because you have some really, really awesome people out here. I know you have a lot of chiropractors and holistic people out here, which I know are the people that are changing the world. So thank you for that, guys, and just thank you for having me today, man.
Absolutely. So if you out there, not only watch this yourself, because I've told you, as we shift with this network, we are going to start helping more patriots, more Americans, to help create the America we're supposed to be in from a free market capitalism standpoint. Because honestly, the only ones who are going to actually fix this place are the entrepreneurs. And it doesn't matter if you want to be a multi-billion-dollar entrepreneur or just a person who has a hobby on a side job but wants to make extra revenue for their family. It doesn't matter. It still contributes energy to a prosperous country, a prosperous people. And so if you know somebody out there, send this to them so that we can give some positive vibes to them, and they can then take something that maybe they were holding on to for a long time and they just didn't want to like branch out. They didn't want to go for the risk because they weren't sure themselves. Send it over, get Jeremy's book in their hands, because it really is a motivational thing, and it's how we're going to fix everything. So again, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is Revolution Network. Dr. Jason Dean, Jeremy Ryan Slate from Command Your Brand. Go pick up his book. The link is in there. We'll drop it again. You guys have an amazing evening. And yes, I will be back at 9:30 with Dr. Horace Drew, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 on Twitter, and it should be a fun time. You guys have an amazing rest of your Monday evening. Take good care of yourselves and be well.